You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
Libertarian Country is one of the fastest growing and most popular liberty-themed apparel companies in the world. This American-based company was founded by two brothers out of Baltimore who had a vision to create an online store that offers fun, unique, and controversial political clothing and accessories. This five-star company offers the hottest shirts, hoodies, hats, and so much more. So check them out today. This is an independently owned, liberty-loving business that basically gives you the exact type of apparel and paraphernalia that you've wanted anyway. You just didn't know you wanted it now. Every purchase you make using the link in the show notes allows a small part of your purchase to come back and support the show. So go grab some awesome Libertarian Country swag using that link in the show notes. You'll thank me later.
Hey everybody, check out the Break the Bell podcast, where we believe your voice is your most powerful weapon. For a weekly dose of our take on what's going on in the world, mixed with a side of history. Find us wherever podcasts are found or on social media handle at Break the Bell Pod. And most importantly, never stop talking.
Prepare yourself. You're on the run with Remso W. Martinez.
So you can go ahead and stop listening to this entire thing if you've heard this one joke before. If you hadn't, I promise you're gonna enjoy it. Well, maybe you won't. It depends whether or not you're a cat person. And I know that's a strange way to intro to the show, but I promise it's all going somewhere. You've got these two friends standing out in the middle of nowhere, as friends do. And you've got one holding a cat and the other one holding a blender. And here you have on one side somebody saying, I'm going to stick this entire cat in a blender. And the other person is like, no, you should not blend the cat. That's freaking crazy. Then a third person comes out and they're screaming, no, wait, you two left-right radicals. Let me meet you in the middle. I'm a centrist. What if we only blend half the cat? Therefore, we only have to determine which half do we put in. And that's basically how politics work. Now, I know what you're probably asking yourself. Where's the libertarian in this situation? You have the left that wants to completely shred the entire cat. You have the right that's saying don't shred the cat. Then you have the moderate saying, well, if we only shred half the cat. Well, the cat is the libertarian. There you go. You're probably not laughing. If you are, I hope you're not driving so that way you don't go into oncoming traffic. But that's essentially the world we live in. We live in a world where if you're listening to this, you're probably part of the small, very minute Illuminati of individuals that are actually questioning whether or not we should have any say in the world. And if you're listening to this program of all things, you probably know my stance is let's just survive it out. Let's go ahead and get our Bitcoin mining and gun running operation and go to Belize or something any day now. But that takes time and money, and hopefully right now we're trying to earn that time and money. But the big question is, in the meantime, how do we get as many people thinking about the things that we like to talk about? Because that's what we do here. The question is often, do people actually want liberty or do they not? It's strange, it's uncanny. It's today's topic. That's why I went ahead and brought on the newest addition to the Wall family, Julia Geier. Julia, thank you for joining the program.
Thank you for having me.
So, you came out of the closet recently, and I don't mean the closet that we're often thinking of, the one that Tom Cruise is still in. I'm talking about the libertarian closet. How did that happen? What was that like? And have you been hunted down for witchcraft and other things?
Well, how did it happen? I mean, I've always been a libertarian. I was raised as a libertarian, and not only was I raised as a libertarian, but I genuinely, in like the deep bottom of my soul, believe in it. But outside of my family, I never knew anyone that was a libertarian. So it was sort of this belief system that I just held privately because I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. No one to like throw ideas at with, or anyone else that even knew about the philosophy or any of the principles. So
you're more likely to find people that are willing to do hard drugs with you than talk about libertarian philosophy and economics and all that jazz.
I mean, I could find like 100 people to do hard drugs with me.
Very easily.
Like that. But talk about libertarianism? No. So that was my experience before I came out of the closet. Then during COVID, oh my God, like I got hit really bad with the whole lockdown experience because all my income dried up in my modeling career. And then I had also just started, I had a startup and it launched 4 weeks before the lockdown started. So that had to close too. So I had two horrible things happen to me financially that were, obviously largely the fault of the government.
You don't say.
Yeah. And then as we really got a couple weeks into the lockdown, I was so incensed by all of our liberties that were being taken from us, and also even more incensed by people being so okay with it, that I just emotionally, I was like, I need to find other libertarians like now. So I turned to Instagram naturally.
As one does.
As one does for everything.
I went to Google the first time. I had no clue I had no clue what that was, and I made the mistake of also Googling Austrian economist, but I didn't quite remember it being Austrian, so I put Australian, and that was a whole other thing. Yeah, that got confusing.
Okay, well, so I started looking I was like, let me see if I can find like an Instagram account that does some libertarian posts, like I didn't even know if that existed because I had never looked for it. Isn't that crazy? So actually We Are Libertarians was one of the accounts that I started following, and then it quickly became my favorite account because I found out Chris was a millennial and he was normal, and I was like, that's awesome. You don't see that a lot. And then also I loved his memes. I love memes, so I'm like, okay, that's awesome too.
They are the currency of the soul.
Honestly. It's like a whole new way of communicating, and I love it. And then I got in touch with Chris because I had this idea. And then I had one tiny baby idea, and Chris was like, we're going to do this whole mountain of things and you're going to be in it. And I was like, yes, let's do it. So
you chose an you chose an interesting time to get involved, because I feel like a lot of people are on their way out. They're planning like their personal and professional exit strategies. And this has been
exiting from the party?
Well, I'm talking about exiting from like civilization, like finding small like swaths of land in like Botswana and starting like a Colonel Kurt's Apocalypse Now cult.
Yeah,
it seems like you have people that are either for the first time trying to become extremely politically active in one shape or form for the first time in their life. I think it's because without sports, without movies, without anything else, this is the only entertainment people have. And then you have a lot of people who have been warning about the actions of the state and what happens when you have this collectivist society that has suddenly, it's turned into an army of Karens, both online and offline. Yeah. And they seem to be the other way. And then I find myself stuck in the middle because I'm at a point in my life where it's like, I want to run, but I can't do it right now. So I might as well watch and see how the roller coaster ends. What was going through your mind during the process when you were finally like in it at this point? Because now the door is wide open, except for Tom Cruise. He's still hiding in the back. But in terms of, the Liberty Closet, I don't think there's ever been a stranger time to be a libertarian. I mean, often with the internet, you've got two very big, loud voices. You've got libertarians and then you've got socialists. But then when you log off your device and you go in the real world, you have people who are more on the left, more on the right. And I believe a large chunk of this population is politically apathetic. They just don't care. They don't have strong opinions on things. But to be a libertarian online, like it's quite strange because I don't look at book reviews. I went and looked up some new reviews for my book, and there was one guy that gave me 1 star, and I thought it was because he had a problem with the content itself. He just said, we can't allow anything with the words libertarian to get out because we've seen the actions of what libertarian theory gets us amidst the pandemic. And I'm like, if you think this is a libertarian's fault, then you've got so many other problems to deal with.
What the? Okay.
So it's turned into a whole weird situation.
That's like so stupid.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you're frozen.
I think I'm frozen. Can you hear me?
Uh-oh.
Hello?
Remso?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, it froze for a sec. I can't see you, but
It's okay.
Oh,
You
now
can
I see.
Yeah, you
Now
can
I see
for a
Chris's
moment.
photo.
Yeah. Okay. Now
Okay,
it works.
hi. I can see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a weird time to be a libertarian. What has happened thus far?
Okay, actually, I feel like I don't feel like that at all.
Okay. Sell it
I
to
feel
me.
like I feel like for the first time, and now I've been a libertarian since I'm a baby. I don't even know. Like I'm always a libertarian my whole life. I have not been involved in the party, but I've always been able to, since I'm a child, I've always had a libertarian point of view on government, on society, on education, on liberties, on everything. And I feel like this is the first time in my life that I can point to what is going on in society clearly to someone that doesn't understand libertarianism and have a good example for them. And they'll be like, oh, right, that is a liberty that they took from us. Because I think before this lockdown, obviously our liberties have been encroached on by the government, for the last since the government was created. So that was the whole point of it. But in such small ways, in such ways that people don't see, with a law here and a law there and a tax here and a business regulation there and all these little minute things that you couldn't point to as a normal person in a normal society that's not really libertarian, and they can't grasp it. They're like I said, I came out of the closet recently, yes, but once in a while I would dabble with someone and be like, well, this is, and they were like, it just was like blinders over them. But I feel now is the first time that people are like, oh, yeah, you're right. I see that. And people are starting to see it. So I feel like, in a way, this is a great time for our party, because never in our lives, obviously, this lockdown has just been from another fucking world, of freedoms being taken from us. So
What do you think? Yeah, I mean, what do you think this has been like for your average person? Because this is, I agree with you. This is probably the first time in most people's lives that they are now directly affected by something that they see on TV for once. And I feel like everyone's jumped to one thing or another. Either one side is prepping for Mad Max's Australia, and then the other side is expecting us to turn into a totalitarian police state, and there's no middle. It's like we're in Star Wars. It's like only Sith steal and absolutes. Now we're in the stage where it's either burn the cities down or let the cops run through your house. It's insane.
I mean, I definitely see how polarizing this is for people, because I feel like people are, oh God, even with the lockdown mixed with the race riots, it's it's put people into two boxes. One box is wait, Remso, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were frozen again. One box is people that are pro-cop, pretty racist, pro-Trump. And then the other side is Bernie, BLM, socialism. That's
basically.
It. And man, okay. And that's what I see. Obviously, we all see that in the media and in the news that we're getting, and the way the stories are being reported. But I don't know if I still feel like the majority of people in this country don't really fucking care.
Are you a pessimist or an optimist, generally?
God, I don't know.
I think I've always naturally been more inclined to be a pessimist with many things.
Yeah.
And it's the challenge I've had for myself is look at this situation and try and find the silver lining with it. I believe that there's going to be some good that comes out of this. Like in my county, I'm in Fairfax, Virginia. We have like the richest, most prosperous public education system ever. I was a product of it. I think it was shit. So I can only imagine what other school districts are like. But we had over 3,500 students countywide pull out permanently. And they're being homeschooled. They're going to private schools. They're doing other stuff.
Wow.
Some are going straight into community college. I look at, our educational industrial complex. I think that public education's one of the most soul crushing things that could happen to a person. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, wow, people are actually getting it. And parents are finally figuring out, regardless of where they are politically, that it was mainly just daycare. And that they actually, they actually benefit more. Were you bored as a student? Like, were you bored?
Not only was I bored, I was a horrible student. I dropped out of high school and got my GED because I was like, I'm not being babysat. I need to go work. I
totally understand where you're going with that. When I
was really smart and all my test scores were super high and but I was just like, I'm not doing this because it was insulting to me in a way.
I asked if I could do that my sophomore year of high school. My parents were like, no, you need to go to school. But when I play the what if game in my head, it's like, if I could have just dropped out and gotten a GED, that would have been so much better. And I think so many other people are starting to realize that this one-size-fits-all solution to educating and socializing your children is just wrong. There was a study put out by the Department of Education itself where they basically showed that the only other place other than prison in your life where you're more likely to be violently assaulted is in an American public school. And when it's public schools in prison, that's never a good outcome. So there's an example. There's an example of one positive thing that's going to happen. I believe that, the whole charade is up. People are looking at teachers who don't want to go back and everything else, and they've been paid regardless of how they teach. And now they're finally saying, this whole gimmick is done. But then at the same time, you've got the other end of the scale. I don't know how you're in New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
So you guys have terrible gun laws to begin with. Here in Virginia, we can buy guns anywhere we want. The problem is there's no ammo. For the first time since I've lived here in 2008, there is a statewide ammo shortage, which gives me this thought that everybody and their grandma is literally arming up. So in one way, as a Second Amendment guy, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. That also makes me think, oh my God, all these other people have guns now.
Well, I think it gives that market is giving you a glimpse of where people's minds are at, which is alarming in a way. I'm pro gun, obviously, but it's wow, people are scared right now. They feel the need to protect themselves, and I'm hoping that they're getting a clue that it's the government that they have to protect themselves from, because that's the idea that people cannot grasp. That's the idea that is not taught to us, obviously, in public school. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that the mental dependency that Americans have on the government now is out of control. The biggest question I get when I talk to people about libertarianism is, well, who would take over this program? Well, who would do it? And I'm like, I don't know, fucking free market, like every other thing in life that functions perfectly. It's crazy. And people are like, well, how would that work? And it's it blows their mind to even question that the free market could be more effective than a government program. And the fact that people have such a hard time grasping that idea it scares me for the future of this country. That scares me, that I'm like, fuck.
Yeah. The question the question I think the media likes to put out a lot is, what will your life be like a year from now? It's always that big, vague question of James Cameron music in the background, dun dun, how is your life going to be next year? And it's always this giant, vague mystery, and it's never good, regardless as to how you're looking at it. And as I've been thinking of, what will things look like a year from now, I'm really trying to understand now. And if there are two books, because I'm always recommending books, if there are two books I would recommend to listeners who have to deal with family and friends who are glued to the TV and cannot stop watching videos of people killing each other online, it's these two, Don Quixote and The Crucible. old ass books, really old. You probably read them in high school. But, you know, what's the big problem with Don Quixote? We're dealing with a mentally ill man who's, you know, putting on knight's armor and he's attacking windmills because he's convinced that they're dragons. And you've got all that going on. Then you've got the Crucible, which talks about the Salem witch trials and how people were using that fear of accusing people of, you know, practicing witchcraft to go ahead and persecute their neighbors to eventually kill everyone they don't like. I think right now we're living in like a combination of Don Quixote where we're chasing windmills and the Crucible where everyone's a witch. And then the question with that is like, what does normal look like? Because the election's coming. But the cool thing about it is it's going to be over. And if you care about the things that we care about, we ultimately know that everybody loses. But there has to be some normal afterwards. I don't know what that normal looks like.
I've been thinking about that a lot too. My thought on what's been going on and what is going to go on is that for the past 4 years, the media has been like just hounding us. Like they just don't stop. And we haven't gotten a break. You know, it's like the left's against Trump for the last 4 fucking years. And honestly, I'm sick of it and everyone else is sick of it. And I don't want Biden to win. I don't want Trump to win, but if I have to choose between the two, which I'm not voting for either of them, but I hope that Biden doesn't win. But if Trump wins, I'm like scared of like the next 4 years.
Let's be honest. One of two men are going to be president on November 4th.
Yeah, exactly.
Trump or Kanye West. I really genuinely don't believe that Biden has a snowball's chance in hell. I will take that money to the bank. I don't believe it. I think it's going to be Trump landslide. And I'm in Northern Virginia. I think Virginia's going to blue. I'm probably going to vote Trump or Kanye. And, you know, it's one of these situations where we have to decide, like, what does winning look like? Because in life, we understand that sometimes the two best options available, they all suck. And my thing is this. There was an interview Trump did where he said that he considers himself a libertarian, and people were having fun with that. I don't believe that Trump is a libertarian at all. I think Trump is about Trump, and Trump does what he thinks is good, whether that's good or bad. My thing about Trump, and this is both a positive and a negative, so it's neither a compliment or an insult. I think Trump forces people to expose who they really are. I think Trump forces people to expose themselves for who they really are. We saw this with a ton of politicians that, either did everything to worship him, to get money out of it or power, or people that went ahead and just blamed him for everything because they don't want to lose any vestige of power. Then for a lot of people, it really showed, it's like, where do your allegiances lie? Between a party, within a person's personality, or are you actually guided by principles? I think when it comes to the systems of government and all our institutions, what we've been forced to ask ourselves is, should the power of the Oval Office be so big that we worry about every little thing he does? And I think these are questions that nobody was really asking prior. The fact that within the first couple of years of Trump, the left suddenly became anti-war again, and we're talking about states' rights and separations of power. It's like I was looking at this and I'm like, oh, they can see now. Good job, Helen Keller. You're not blind anymore, or something like that. But then it ultimately came down to, no, they just hate him more than anything else. Orange man bad. Yeah. I think with Biden, we just see what we were used to. But with Trump, I genuinely see the only positive, big long-term impact he has with an additional 4 years is, let's see what he's like as a lame duck. Let's see what really happens and what these people do to each other. Because it's this giant reality show that we're all part of, and it affects us. But the big question should be, should it? And why does it? And what led us to here? I don't think the answers within our own lives are going to come through political outcomes. That's why ultimately I barely even vote anymore. What are some of the things that you've looked at within your own life where you've asked yourself, what am I doing now to make myself freer? Because that seems to be the question I'm asking myself a lot. Mm-hmm. Is my physical health great? No, not really. Are my finances great? Okay, I could talk about that. Or am I free here? We're asking ourselves questions like, if I needed to leave, could I leave? If I needed to go somewhere else, could I go there? I think it's really going to have to come down to individual actions within our own lives and less about the political outcomes of things outside our control. But that was just another tangent.
I'm thinking about the last thing you just said. I think it's a really good question that people should be asking themselves. What are you doing to make yourself freer? I was thinking about that. I don't know, recently during this lockdown, that came to my mind about how I live, what I do for work, what taxes I pay, which ones I don't, like how I try to just have cash jobs if I can, or always go around, pay cash. Like, there's a lot of little things that you can do in your life to make yourself more free, to get out from underneath the government's grip, to avoid taxes.
That's the story of my life right there, avoiding taxes.
Yeah, me too. Oh my God.
I hope no one from the IRS listens to this. The only thing I fear more than God is the IRS.
Fuck them. Ugh, disgusting to me. But that's a really good question. I think that some people that don't understand libertarianism, they wouldn't even understand that question.
Yeah.
So what does that question mean to someone that doesn't know the philosophy of libertarianism? What that means is
they'd probably think they were doing okay.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, like, everyone thinks they're like, well, I'm an American, I'm free. Well, you need to question that a little more. How free are you? How much do you pay in taxes? Can you change your job so that you can pay less in taxes or no taxes at all, even better? Can you get a citizenship in another country? Can you make a deal with someone you're doing business with and do things on the side off book? These are things that are good for you, good for your life. They save you money. They give you more liberty. But I don't think people know about that, or they're scared of it, or they don't have experience with it. So they don't, maybe they're like, oh, I don't know about that stuff.
These are like those scary esoteric questions that people like to avoid at all costs. And I feel like libertarians, we instinctively have this different outlook on things, where that 100%. Seems to be the only
natural.
Yeah.
The only. It's like the ultimate goal.
Okay, we're about to nerd out. You're an Ayn Rand fan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Howard Rourke is my spirit animal.
Is he?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Howard.
Yeah. I wanted to get a I'm not going to talk about the tramp stamp tattoo I almost got in college. Anyway, it was a whole other thing, neither here nor there. But that's one of the things that a lot of people find scary about Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand is not what some people would consider a through and through libertarian, but a lot of objectivism overlaps with libertarian.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, and I believe that Ayn Rand is like all her books should be required reading for most people, whether you agree or not, because she forces you to ask yourself questions you would otherwise never be asked anywhere else. Mm-hmm. And I never found her too threatening. Like she was very pro-choice. I'm very pro-life. She was an atheist. This is the end. This is everything. I'm a Christian. But she made me assess certain things about myself that I would have never assessed otherwise. That's why I think, anyone that makes you think and put yourself on the spot, so you have to not just come up with an answer, but provide a reason is important. And she does it in many ways.
Big moral questions. Yeah, she answers life's biggest moral questions.
And I think the biggest thing that
philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that scares people is that they never think of themselves as an individual until things really come down to like life or death circumstances. And I think that's what's led us to this point now where, everyone's being driven to one side or another. You can't have an individual choice. There can't be a gray area. And if you're seen doing something that's outside of the pack, you're going to be targeted. It's those type of questions.
I feel like this has been like a war on the individual.
This has
for
been
a long time.
what we're living in right now is a freaking Ayn Rand novel.
It is. But the reason why it is because, she lived through the Russian Revolution and she saw socialism come into play in her own world. So she had a firsthand understanding of how this can actually happen. She saw her government be overthrown and people, slip into poverty and corruption. And God, it influenced her whole philosophy. And I think the biggest thing that I've taken from studying objectivism is that it gave me a tool that I can pinpoint people and what kind of person are you morally based on what they do, how they live, and their belief system. But you don't even have to ask them those questions. You can kind of, it's like this weird thing. Like once you read Atlas Shrugged, you're like, oh, you're that type of person. You know what I mean?
Like seriously, you're absolutely spot on. Yeah, and I've been thinking like whenever there's been like a serious global situation, whether it was war, famine, plagues, whatever, like amazing people always come out the other end. And I'm looking at the situation right now, and I'm just looking like we're gonna get the next Thomas Sowell out of this, Thomas Sowell. We're gonna get the next Ayn Rand or the next Milton Friedman or Barry Goldwater.
True.
It's just a matter of asking ourselves, like, are they already here? Do we know their names, or are we gonna have to wait a little bit? And what situations right now? I'm trying to be an optimist. I really am, because my mind automatically goes towards like the worst case scenario. And it's very easy to get bogged down on that, especially now.
Well, the reason you asked me before if I'm an optimist or pessimist, I actually think that I'm a realist, but I'm probably lean a little bit more
that's
toward
such an
optimism.
objectivist thing to say.
Well, I'm saying that's my goal though. I always try to be like logic based, but I do lean toward optimism, I think, because historically, has the worst thing always happened? No. Not always. So you can't assume that, because I don't think logically that would be correct.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably good to hit middle of the road on that, and maybe mentally healthy once in a while to be optimistic.
I could believe that. There's this saying by Aristotle where Marcus Aurelius in his journal Meditations, and he basically goes, like I'm paraphrasing the hell out of this. The worst outcomes are always in my head. So let reality be disappointing. Basically saying, everything that I can think of is going to be worse that can potentially actually happen. Therefore, it's not going to be as bad as I think it is. But these are all the questions, and they're complicated, and I'm still trying to answer them. It's times like these, I think, force us to do it, because I don't think I would have ever been confronted with these myself otherwise.
Yeah, I agree with you. Definitely this lockdown has been humbling. And if you're not doing some deep thinking during lockdown, you're never going to do deep thinking.
Yeah. It's always good to be productive, though. And one thing I'm really excited to talk about is the new series that you're going to be working on, Liberty Explained. I'm glad that somebody is doing it, because I'm tired of explaining it. So now it's time to pass the baton and move on with our lives. What's going on with that? What can you tell folks? Give us a little sneak peek.
Well, me and Chris Spangle, and I have to say it's mostly Chris and all the other people that are supporting us behind the scenes doing all the research.
Blessed be his name.
What's that?
Oh, I said, blessed be his name. Great.
Oh, yeah. So, me and Chris and Chris's friend Levy, who I haven't met yet, but I'll meet her next week. We're producing a podcast series that also has an Instagram and a website, libertyexplained.com. And what it does is it explains liberty to people, and really the libertarian movement to people that have no idea what it is. And this happened because I've been talking a lot about libertarianism during the lockdown. And, I told you, like, I came out of the closet and I really started talking about it a lot. And most
I
of the
hope
people
that becomes a bumper sticker. Get out of the closet. That would be
should
fun.
that be our new lingo?
That should be the thing.
Not bad.
That's the catchphrase. Get out of the closet. And then people are going to be like, I thought we were past that. It's 2020.
The libertarian closet. So, okay. So, I was talking about a lot. Most of the people that I associate with are Republicans, because I live in a really Republican area of New Jersey. And, you can only do so much justice in a few minutes of time talking to someone about what libertarianism is. So I found myself wanting some bullet pointed memes or just a little list or some stuff I can send someone on Instagram. And I was like, I really can't find this stuff, simple, concise, very easy to swallow things. And so
bite-sized liberty.
Yeah, exactly. So I contacted Chris and I was like, Chris, I need this stuff. Do you have it? And he was like, no, but I really want to produce it. And I was like, I do too. Let's do it. So we started this thing. It's coming out really soon. And we talk about, if you're a person that's interested in, you're curious, what is a libertarian? I don't fully understand it. I think I might like it. What do they really believe in? What is it really all about? This is really a millennial friendly space that we're all young, normal millennial people. We're not some dusty old man, using language that you can't understand. We're all just normal people, breaking down what the whole philosophy is, in a cool, fun way, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
No, this is one of those things that I think, unless you really think about, I think a lot of libertarians, they want to jump right into the deep end of the pool with people.
Yeah.
And as soon as you jump into that and then you're telling people that have never even swam before to jump in, they get kind of pushed off by it.
I agree.
My challenge has always been, how do I describe the super complicated thing that really isn't that complicated to people that really have only a public school understanding of how politics works? And I always started off with, libertarians believe that you shouldn't hurt people and you shouldn't take their stuff, and that people should be able to live their lives as they want as long as they don't do any of that other stuff. Because I think everyone instinctively is like, well, I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to take your stuff.
Yeah.
But then you go and you're like, okay, how do you feel about the drug war? It's like they start foaming at the mouth like someone from the Evil Dead. It's like they just become like Linda Blair. Their head starts spinning, green puke flying out. And then it's like, well, what do you think about private businesses not serving people? If you want to get really edgy with it, it's like, should a Jewish bakery be forced by the government to prepare a Nazi wedding cake? Stuff
Absolutely
like that.
Not.
Yeah, like it starts. Like you start throwing these theoretically out there and then they start getting out. I think with libertarians, what we need to do is we need to take them into the kiddie pool and then maybe just really get them out there. So by the time they're going to the deeper end, they don't need to hold your hands. They don't need floaties. They're just going to be instinctively floating over there. And then they're going to get to the point where they come to these conclusions themselves. Because if they aim for freedom, then what is the question?
That's our goal. And the way we're approaching it is, I noticed when I was talking to people, when I first started talking to people about this, people couldn't really grasp the principles. They can't grasp the principles right away. But what they were able to understand was what do libertarians vote on? What do they support? Libertarians are socially radical. They're like, as long as you're not hurting me, you do what you want. You want to do drugs? You go do drugs. You want to get an abortion? Go ahead. You want to build a really crazy house in the middle of the woods? See you later. Do that. And they believe in small government, so when I would tell people things like that, they were like, oh, I saw it start to connect with them. And I was kind of like, because I always thought they have to have some philosophy first, the principles, and then build on that. But then as I was like teaching these people that never even like heard of the party, like, yeah, like libertarians, like social issues, they're like really like progressive. Like they basically socially, like you do whatever you want, but then they believe in like really limited government, and like they only want government involved in like, defense. And like,
I think they think
really,
those, yeah, I mean, I think they think that those things have to be separate, because how could you allow all this other stuff to happen also at the same time if you're not forcing it to happen?
what things to be separate? What do you mean?
Well, okay. Well, let's take the marriage issue as an example, because it's one of those things that everyone's kind of like on a consensus on right now. It feels like a million years ago that this was still controversial, but it's really only been 5 years. Why did we need the government to tell people who they could and could not marry? Because even though people felt like they could do it because they chose to do it, we were all looking at the government to make it happen. And then we were all forcing each other to take responsibility over the actions. That came down to a Supreme Court decision. And I think for a lot of people that were already liberty minded, we were looking at this and it's like, why were we asking those people permission to begin with?
Yeah. Well, that's like the overarching question of our lives. Why are we asking them for permission? And I feel like if the whole country could grasp that idea, game changer.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it is obvious, but when you put the words out there, that's when things become controversial. I remember I was in DC in 2015. I was at Freedom Works at the time, and somebody asked me, this is right before the Supreme Court decision came out, legalizing same-sex marriage. Somebody asked me where I stood on marriage, and I said, I'm against marriage. And then they're like, what? Like as an institution? I'm like, no, I'm not for one marriage or another marriage. I'm against the government having any role in marriage. I think that should just be a contract between two people.
Yeah.
And then that's where it became weird. It's like, yeah, but what if people tell other people not to do it? I'm like, who are these people? I need you to point to the people, because the only people I see telling people what to think about that are across the street at Capitol Hill. No one else is telling people that.
No one cares.
We're always looking for the person to tell us what to do, though. I think that's also part of it. This constant idea of if somebody doesn't say it, or if somebody isn't giving the guidelines, does that mean there are no rules? Does that mean I can't do something? Does that mean I do it myself? It's these things that are so simple, yet when they begin to see it, it's like, oh, this has just opened up a giant can of what about this?
Yep.
Yeah.
I know. Well, I think that goes back to what we were saying before about the public school education, because not only does the public school education fail us in like general education, they don't teach people how to think for themselves. That doesn't happen. It's really a collectivist education. Most people never even have the idea introduced into their lives of individualism, personal accountability. It's just so much collectivism. And it's led us to where we are now. It's damaging.
Absolutely. I kind of want to focus in on something. When you dropped out of high school and you got your GED, how old were you when you did that?
17.
Okay. What were the reactions from other people? Because here's what I always thought, and this is something that I think only recently more people have begun to look at. Because like now, if people ask me, if you could go back in time and do this, what would you do? I tell them I would have dropped out at 16. I would have got my GED and I would have started working. Now I say that, and some people are like, yeah, that makes sense. I wish I could have done that. I feel like if I said that like 10 years ago, 10 years ago I was that old, it would have been like, oh, don't you know what they say about people who get GEDs? They're just going to drop out, do drugs, and go to jail. And it's everyone. It's one of those universal things where it's like we have this idea of the type of people that get it, but it's like the why also matters. We jump to these immediate conclusions without having anything really to back it up.
Yeah, you're right.
Than like
why?
Cultural presuppositions about it.
Yeah. So are you asking me why I did?
No, like what did other people say when you told them that you wanted to do that, or when you did do it?
Well, I didn't tell anyone except for my mom. I was a horrible, horrible teenager. I was just a nightmare. I was a horrible nightmare. And I was a horrible student by choice. I never went to school. And when I went, I would just constantly get suspended because I was just like, this is so insulting to my intelligence. Like, I'm not being babysat and ushered around by a bunch of like loser adults that like aren't even teaching me anything relevant. By the time I was 15, I had already been like, indoctrinated into like objectivism and libertarianism for like 10 years. Like, I'm like, whoa, this is not jiving with me. Like, and I didn't even know how to like put that into like, connect that, but I just knew in my gut, like, I was like, I don't need to learn about another fucking war in this stupid history class. I need to go to work. I need to get life skills. I need to make money. And I was just like, I knew it was a waste of time inherently. I don't know why. I also loved partying, going out and like seeing my friends and getting drunk and smoking weed and stuff. So I was just like always out, like having fun. And that's really what I wanted to do. And I was working too. But I worked at a juice bar and a gym. It was a really big deal. Okay.
There you go.
But I mean, I had tortured my mom through like 3 years almost of high school. One of them I was homeschooled because I got mono and I was like, I ain't gonna be homeschooled, which was a fucking joke. And I was just a nightmare. And so my mom came to school one day and my guidance counselor was like, your daughter is not going to be able to graduate, because I had like straight F's through high school because I never went. And my mom just looked at me and she was like, do you want to leave? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, all right, where do I sign? And she signed me out. And then like we left school and we went to a bakery and got like some like cake and stuff and went home and celebrated because it was great. And then I got my GED like 2 months later. And in that time I live an hour outside of New York City. So I got a waitressing job, and then I started taking art classes in Manhattan because I'm an artist, and I built my portfolio, and I got a scholarship to go to college in the next year and a half. So I worked and I built my life to the way I wanted it to be,
Wow. So you didn't just end up like strung out on heroin and out of prison.
No.
But that's what we're taught. That's what we're taught. That's what society wants to tell us.
I know.
If you leave the prestigious public education that we all have to die on a hill for, it's just your life is over.
Well, I asked them to look at me. I mean, not like I'm some fucking billionaire, but you know what? I live a good life. I've had a really great modeling career. I got to go to college. I traveled the world. I've started my own business a few times. Like, I'm successful, and public school did shit for me. Sorry.
It's the best way to put it.
Sorry.
But I mean, ultimately, you, even at a young age, you ultimately determined it's like, listen, if I'm going to have to deal with all of this, it might as well be my choice. Good or bad, it's my choice. And I think that's the one thing that people are going to have to ask themselves now and ask themselves after this. Do I or do I not allow them to shut down my business?
Yes.
Do I or do I not allow them to force me away from my friends and family? Do I or do I not call out bad abuses of authority when I see it? Left, right, or indifferent, the age of convenience is over. This is the world now.
I want to say something about that. I remember when I was, I want to say I was in 8th grade, so maybe I was 12 or something. Mm-hmm. My dad had driven me to school that day, and we were talking in the car on the way to him dropping me off, and I was definitely complaining about something with school, because I was just... School was like a big tumor on my back. It never made me feel good, even when I was really little. So
it's like one of those talking tumors on TV. It's like, spell out the bureaucratic formula. It's like, teach me how to do taxes.
Literally. So my dad said to me, Joel, he said, you have a choice. You always have a choice. And I was like, oh, and he said, no matter what, if something is, if you don't have to do anything, you have a choice, and that choice is powerful. And that struck me. That stayed with me forever, because from when I was 12, I always knew, like, even when someone told me to do something, if I didn't agree with it, I was like, no, this is my choice, and people need to understand that. I think that was an idea that was really powerful to me. I wish everyone knew that. And I've always known that. I think, is why my life is so different, because I'm always just like, I choose. No matter what the law is, no matter what society is saying, no matter what people are pushing or condemning, I always understand that I have a choice, and I always exercise that choice.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Now I'm about to completely ruin it. I always feel like when I come out with something like, oh yeah, I had something similar happen, it's always less cool, very less poetic. But like I had that moment when I was like 5. I don't know if it's because as a toddler I was already an asshole, or if I was just thinking objectively. But like one of the biggest lies I feel that people, especially parents, especially new parents, and I'm not a parent, but I feel like all my friends that have recently become parents feel like they're part of the system. They've become the man themselves when they like, finally put their kids in like daycare or preschool or something, and one of the first things they teach them is sharing is caring. No, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Like I just remember, like I had a Power Rangers action figure, and somebody asked if they could play with it, and I said no because it's mine. And they said, "But you're not actively playing with it." I'm like, "It's in my hand. It's mine." And then I got in trouble from the teacher because she said I wasn't caring enough. And I said, like, I probably
that's not a good lesson.
Yeah. Like my thing was like, it doesn't make any sense. It's mine. It's yours. Like it starts so infantile, and I would sell this to like friends of mine in college, and they're like, "Well, why didn't you just share?" Well, were you actually doing something?
Because it's yours.
Yeah, it's like,
well, I think the question to ask
we're fighting over that.
Yeah, well, I think the question to ask in that situation is, why was the lesson that you have to share? Why wasn't the lesson that's his, leave him alone?
Boom, right there.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. Because that's like an entitlement thing. Everyone has to share their shit with you. It's not yours. Get off of it. Like that's not healthy.
Yeah. No, the grooming starts. Yeah. I mean, the grooming starts young, and what you said about everything being a choice, it's like we tend to forget that, or we tend to want to push it away. And that's what's created the world we live in now, where we don't want to make the hard choices. We want others to make it. And then we get mad at them when they make other choices.
Yep, you're right.
It's the world that we live in. I'm hoping that within the next generation or so, more people will say, nope, this is very inconvenient, and we got to change the system. For better or for worse, it's going to be a choice. Julia, thank you so much for coming on the program. I've had an absolute blast. Thank you for all the work you're putting in, and I'm excited to see everything come to fruition.
Thank you.
Absolutely. If people want to keep up with you, track everything that's going on, how could they do so?
Oh, you can follow me on Instagram. My handle is Julia Geier NYC. It's JuliaGeier NYC.
Awesome stuff.
And you can also go to libertyexplained.com, and you can check out the podcasts and the website, and also the Instagram at Liberty Explained.
And folks, I'll make it easy for you too. I'll even go ahead and link it to the show notes, so it's all in one place. As always, please don't go around burning other people's shit down, and be nice to each other. As Bill and Ted said, be excellent and party on. I'm Remso W. Martinez. You're listening to On the Run. Good night.
Check out our other shows and more from the We Are Libertarians Network at wearelibertarians.com.